7. Persuasion Secrets: How the Powerful Get What They Want. Machiavelli's Hidden Playbook. Have you ever wondered why some people can walk into a room and instantly get others to do what they want? Or why certain leaders throughout history could get entire nations to follow them, even when it wasn't in their best interest? What if I told you it's not about being the smartest or the richest? It's about knowing certain psychological triggers that are basically wired into all of our brains. This isn't some made-up theory. It's the real science behind persuasion, and the world's most influential people have been using these same techniques for hundreds of years. Hey guys, welcome back. If you caught my previous videos, you know we've been diving into how Machiavelli figured out the mind games of power way back in the 1500s. Today we're taking things up a notch. I'm going to show you the exact psychological buttons that powerful people push to get others to do what they want, and how you can spot these techniques being used on you. Quick heads up before we start. Once you see these persuasion tactics, you'll start noticing them everywhere. Your favorite brands use them. Politicians use them. Your boss probably uses them. Even your friends and family might be using them on you. Some people prefer not knowing when they're being influenced, so if that's you, maybe sit this one out. Still here? Perfect. Let's get into it. So back in the 1500s, this guy Machiavelli writes The Prince, basically a how-to manual for rulers. A lot of people think he was just telling leaders to be cruel, but that's not really it. He was actually breaking down the psychological tricks that work to lead people and keep them loyal. Now fast forward about 500 years to the 1980s. A researcher named Robert Cialdini spends years studying what makes people say yes to things. He discovers that there are basically 6 main triggers that work on pretty much everyone, regardless of culture or background. He puts all this in his book, Influence. Here's what blew my mind when I first discovered this. Almost everything Machiavelli told rulers to do matches exactly with what Cialdini proved through scientific research centuries later. Somehow, just by watching people, Machiavelli figured out the same persuasion tricks that modern science took hundreds of years to confirm. It's like he had a special ability to see how people's minds really work. Let me start with what might be the most powerful persuasion trick ever. The rule of give and take, or what Cialdini calls reciprocity. It's pretty simple. When someone does something for us, we feel like we need to do something back for them. It's almost like we can't help it. And often we end up giving back way more than we got in the first place. Machiavelli totally got this. He told rulers to strategically give gifts and favors because he knew each gift created an invisible debt. He said, "Men are quicker to forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance." Pretty harsh, but he was making a real point. Actual benefits create loyalty better than just abstract ideas or promises. I remember watching a CEO who was amazing at using this. He'd do these small personal gestures for key employees. He'd remember their kids' names, send personal notes when they were going through tough times, or bend company rules when they had a family emergency. Just little things, right? But when crunch time came and the company needed people to work late or take on extra projects, guess who volunteered first? The same people who received those small favors. They didn't even realize why they felt so motivated to help out. What makes this so powerful is that it happens without us even thinking about it. When someone helps you, you genuinely want to help them back. You don't realize that maybe their initial help was actually a calculated move to make you feel this way. Cialdini's research showed this works even with favors we didn't ask for or even want. Here's the sneaky way the real pros use this. They start with small, seemingly innocent favors or concessions. Once that feeling of, "I should give back," is triggered in you, they then make bigger requests that you would have definitely said no to if they'd asked right away. But now, you feel this pressure to reciprocate. so you agree to things that aren't even good for you. I once watched this happen in a business negotiation. One side started with an extreme position, then gradually made what seemed like concessions, saying things like, "We're trying to meet you halfway here." But if you looked closely, these weren't fair concessions at all. They were still getting the much better deal. But the other team felt this psychological pressure to give something back, so they made real compromises in return. By the end, they'd agreed to a terrible deal, but they actually felt grateful for the flexibility the other side had shown. Machiavelli told rulers to do exactly this. He suggested appearing to make concessions while not really giving up much at all. He wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The broken promise is a necessity of the present." He knew the feeling of owing someone is more important than what actually got exchanged. The second big persuasion trick Cialdini discovered is what he calls commitment and consistency. Basically, once we've committed to something, especially publicly, we feel this huge pressure to stick with it. After we take a position or make a choice, we really want to stay consistent with that decision, even if we later realize it wasn't the best idea. Machiavelli was all over this one. He told rulers to get public declarations of loyalty from their subjects. He knew that once someone stands up and says, "I'm loyal to this leader" in front of everyone, they'll feel this inner need to stick with that position, even when the ruler does things they don't actually agree with. Machiavelli said, "The first impression that one gets of a ruler and of his intelligence is from seeing the men he has around him." He was saying that who you publicly associate with shapes how people see you, and it also locks those people into supporting you. I've seen this work like magic in modern companies. I remember one organization that needed to make some big changes that people were resisting. Instead of forcing everyone to change all at once, the smart leaders just asked each department to find one small process they could improve. Nothing major, just one tiny change. But here's the brilliant part. Once people had publicly committed to the idea of improvement, even in this tiny way, they suddenly became much more open to bigger changes. It's like they had to stay consistent with their first step. The trick is to start small and build up. Really skilled persuaders never ask for big commitments right away. They start with tiny little requests that seem harmless. Fill out this quick form, answer a couple questions, attend a short meeting. Each small yes creates this inner pressure to keep saying yes to stay consistent. This is why free trials and samples work so well. They're not just nice offers, they're psychological triggers that use this commitment principle to get you locked in. The third persuasion trigger Cialdini found is something he calls social proof. It's basically our habit of looking around to see what everyone else is doing when we're not sure what to do. When we're in an uncertain situation, we don't usually think for ourselves. We just check what others are doing and copy them. Machiavelli figured this out way before it had a scientific name. He told rulers to make sure lots of people witnessed their good deeds and acts of generosity, but to keep punishments more private. He knew that public displays create patterns that others will follow automatically. He said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see you, to few to come in touch with you." In plain English, he meant people form opinions based on what they see happening around them, not by digging deeper themselves. I saw a really smart use of this in a company that was trying to get everyone to use new technology. Instead of forcing people or creating strict rules, they found the informal leaders in each department. Not the managers, but the people others naturally respected and looked up to. They got these people on board first. Once these respected employees were using the new system and talking positively about it, everyone else just naturally followed along. They didn't need to mandate anything. People voluntarily adopted the technology because they saw others they respected using it. This is why testimonials are so effective in advertising, why companies pay celebrities millions to endorse products, and why you see bestseller and most popular choice labels everywhere. We're massively influenced by what we think other people are doing or choosing, often more than by any logical argument about why something is good. The fourth big trigger Cialdini discovered is super simple, but incredibly powerful. We say yes to people we like. We're much more likely to agree with people we find attractive, people similar to us, or people who compliment us. This seems really obvious, but most people don't realize just how much this affects their decisions. Machiavelli totally understood how powerful likability is. He told princes to associate themselves with qualities their subjects admired, even if they didn't actually have those qualities. Everyone remembers his famous quote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But most people miss the important part, if you cannot be both. Machiavelli wasn't saying fear is better than love. He was saying ideally you want both, but if forced to choose, fear is more reliable. He knew how incredibly powerful being liked really is. I've watched some leaders who are naturals at using this. They always find something in common with whoever they're talking to. They remember personal details about people's lives, and they give genuine compliments. I knew this one executive who kept actual notes about personal interests and family details for everyone in his company. Whenever he talked to someone, he'd always start with a genuine personal connection before getting to business. The loyalty this created was amazing. People would put in extra hours and go above and beyond for him specifically, not just for the company. What's really interesting is all the little things that make us like someone. Good-looking people automatically seem smarter and more trustworthy. That's called the halo effect. Finding any similarity, even something tiny like sharing a hometown or birthday, creates an instant bond. And compliments work even when they're obvious flattery. We still respond positively even if we know someone's buttering us up. People who are good at persuasion use this by quickly establishing things they have in common with you, giving sincere compliments, and connecting themselves to things they know you already like. They do all this before ever asking for anything, because they know once you like them, you're already predisposed to say yes. The fifth persuasion trigger Cialdini discovered is authority, our automatic tendency to follow directions from people who seem to be in charge or have expertise. From when we're little kids, we're taught to listen to teachers, parents, police officers, and doctors. This habit of obeying authority becomes so automatic that we often don't even think about it. Machiavelli was super aware of how powerful perceived authority is. He told rulers to maintain all the visual symbols of power and to connect themselves with established institutions like the church. He knew that looking powerful was often more important than actually being powerful. He wrote, "Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, for everyone can see, but few can feel. Everyone sees what you seem to be. Few know what you really are." Basically, he was saying appearances matter more than reality because most people never look beneath the surface. I saw a really clear example of this in a hospital once. When doctors wore their white coats, patients just accepted whatever they recommended without many questions. But when those exact same doctors dressed in regular business clothes, patients suddenly started questioning them and were less likely to follow their advice. Nothing about the doctor's knowledge or expertise had changed at all. Just the visible symbol of authority was missing. What makes this authority trigger so powerful is that it happens without us even thinking about it. We automatically respond to symbols of authority, titles like doctor or professor, uniforms, expensive suits, or fancy offices, without stopping to consider if the person's authority is even relevant to the situation. People who are skilled at persuasion know this, so they make sure symbols of authority are very visible. They also know that borrowed authority works great. Just being associated with experts or established institutions transfers that authority to you. The sixth persuasion trigger Cialdini discovered is scarcity. Our tendency to want things more when they're hard to get or when we might miss out. Opportunities suddenly seem way more valuable when they're limited, and we really hate losing options or freedoms once we have them. Machiavelli naturally understood this concept. He advised rulers to deliver good news in person, but have others deliver bad news, which made their positive attention seem more valuable by making it rare. He also suggested rulers should be somewhat hard to access, not completely unavailable, but not always available either. He knew that scarcity increases perceived value. As he put it, men value the good when they have lost it. We don't appreciate what we have until it's gone or threatened. I've seen this scarcity principle turn ordinary things into hot commodities. One company I worked with couldn't get employees interested in a training program when it was open to everyone. But when they repackaged the exact same program as a special opportunity with limited spots available by application only, suddenly everyone wanted in and they had a waiting list. Nothing about the actual program changed at all, just the perception that it was scarce. This is why you see limited time offer, exclusive opportunity, and while supplies last, everywhere in marketing. They're not just trying to create urgency, they're triggering a deep psychological response that makes us value things more when we think they might not be available later. What's really fascinating about scarcity is how much stronger it gets when you add competition. When we think other people want the same limited thing, our desire for it skyrockets. This explains why auction prices can go crazy high, way beyond what something is actually worth. Watching others compete for a scarce item triggers powerful psychological reactions that override rational thinking. In recent years, Cialdini added a seventh trigger to his original six: unity. This is our tendency to say yes to people we see as part of our group or shared identity. We're much more influenced by people we view as one of us than by outsiders, even when they're saying exactly the same thing. Machiavelli recognized how powerful this group identity is centuries ago. He advised rulers to adopt the customs and traditions of the regions they governed, to appear as part of the people rather than as outsiders. He wanted rulers to blend in and seem like one of us to their subjects. I saw a perfect example of this unity principle when a company was trying to implement some controversial changes. At first, there was tons of resistance, but then they completely reframed the situation. Instead of it being management versus workers, they made it about our company versus our competitors. By creating this shared identity facing a common enemy, they completely transformed resistance into cooperation. Same exact changes, totally different response, just by triggering that sense of, we're all on the same team. This explains why skilled persuaders always emphasize shared connections, common enemies, or collective journeys. When you hear phrases like, "We're all in this together," as a fellow parent, or as someone who shares your values, these aren't just nice ways of speaking. They're deliberately triggering this unity principle to make their message much more persuasive. When someone positions themselves as part of your group, you're automatically more receptive to whatever they're saying. So now that we've gone through all these persuasion triggers, you might be wondering, how do I protect myself when people try to use these against me? The good news is that just knowing about these principles already makes you much less vulnerable to them. When you notice yourself feeling strongly pulled to say yes to something, just pause for a second and ask yourself, which of these triggers is being activated right now? Is someone trying to make me feel obligated by doing me a favor I didn't ask for? Are they making something seem scarce just to pressure me? Are they flashing symbols of authority that don't really matter for this situation? Just being conscious of these techniques doesn't make you completely immune. These triggers are basically hardwired into our brains. But awareness does give you the chance to make an actual choice instead of just responding on autopilot. Beyond just being aware, watch out for these red flags that someone might be using these principles in a manipulative way. When someone creates, what's truly remarkable is how accurately Machiavelli described these principles of persuasion centuries before they were scientifically validated. He didn't have the benefit of controlled experiments or psychological studies, but his careful observation of human behavior revealed the same patterns that modern research has confirmed. This convergence between Renaissance political theory and cutting-edge psychological science tells us something important. Human psychology hasn't fundamentally changed. The same persuasion principles that shaped politics in Machiavelli's time continue to determine who has influence today. The only difference is that now we have scientific terminology to describe what Machiavelli observed through raw experience. So what can we learn from this exploration of Machiavellian persuasion and Cialdini's principles? First, that influence is not random or magical. It follows specific, predictable patterns that can be understood and applied. Second, that awareness of these patterns gives you significant protection against unwanted influence. And third, that ethical application of these principles can help you become more effective in positive leadership roles. Let me share a personal story that illustrates how powerful these principles can be when used together. Years ago, I was consulting for an organization implementing a major technology change that was meeting fierce resistance. The leadership was frustrated, as logical arguments about efficiency and cost savings were falling flat. We completely restructured their approach using Cialdini's principles. First, we identified respected team members, not managers, who were willing to try the new system, social proof. We had executives personally thank these early adopters, reciprocity, and publicly recognize their commitment, consistency. We limited initial access to the system to create a sense that participation was exclusive, scarcity. Leaders shared personal stories about their own challenges adapting to new technology, liking through similarity. We brought in external experts to explain the benefits, authority. And we consistently framed the change as our shared journey toward a better future, unity. The transformation was remarkable. The same people who had been actively resisting the change began volunteering to participate. Within 3 months, adoption had reached 90%, far beyond the initial goal. Most importantly, no one felt manipulated because the new system genuinely benefited everyone. The persuasion principles simply helped overcome the natural human resistance to change. This is the difference between manipulation and ethical persuasion. Ethical persuasion leads people toward choices that benefit them as well as you. It respects their autonomy while helping them overcome the psychological barriers that might prevent them from making beneficial decisions. Machiavelli is often misunderstood as advocating for manipulation and cruelty, but a careful reading of his work reveals a more nuanced view. He recognized that effective leadership requires understanding human psychology and working with it rather than against it. As he wrote, "A wise ruler ought never to keep faith, when by doing so it would be against his interests." This sounds harsh until you recognize that he's simply acknowledging that rigid adherence to rules without considering human psychology leads to ineffective leadership. The most effective leaders, both in Machiavelli's time and today, are those who understand these principles of persuasion and apply them ethically to create positive change. They don't fight against human psychology. They work with it. If you found this exploration of persuasion principles valuable, hit that subscribe button because in the next video, we'll be diving into how Machiavelli's insights intersect with Michel Foucault's concepts of power and knowledge, revealing how information control is the ultimate form of power in the modern world. You'll learn exactly how today's power players use information asymmetry to maintain control, often without others even realizing it's happening. Drop a comment below if you've recognized any of these persuasion principles being used on you, or if you've used them yourself, ethically of course. And remember, this knowledge comes with responsibility. Understanding the science of persuasion gives you power, but true wisdom lies in how you choose to use it. This information is provided for educational purposes only. The goal is to help you recognize persuasion tactics and make more conscious decisions, not to encourage unethical manipulation.